Hello everyone. Um, I'm going to present about the secret economic of ancient Israel. I, Introduction. My science reading book is Secret Economic of Ancient Israel. This is one of the best book for the history of economic, which began by the ancient history, according to the author. In this book, the author looked for the trade in the early capitalist market economic, but the most working from the profound knowledge of the history of political economic theory. However, there are some part of this book were represented by my co-presenter, and I'm here to present the pages 132 to 222. Chapter 4. The first topic is feeding the producer or estate. Estate appear at the earliest moment of the town livings. The estate were first a feature of temple, supreme priest, which formed the focus of the activity in more powerful town or little kingdom. The estate system was constructed by the place itself. In Israel, this seemed to have taken place during the brief period of first millennium, when it aspired to the status of the little kingdom. The administration of such estate may have various ranging from directly appointed overseas to tenants and landlords. The reality of the estate mean that agriculture was divided in terms of two basically different economic structure. Between one is the subsistence survivor of the village commune, and two is estate initial of the temple and others place when it drew the temple under the control. Estate after that state. Most analysis of the ancient state, let alone in the ancient Israel, assume that the rise of the state is commitment with the rise of the ruling class or elite, as the less robust literature would have it. As a ruling class form, so does the state. Often the state is the product of class conflict and not, as is so often assumed, an imposition upon the people from outside. On the other side, administration will need for the network of estate, detail of a person, hand, tax, ration, tools, and livestock. Other dimension of the administration concern the ruling class, building project, and other organization skill labor. Estate labor is more obviously tied down for the conjunction of the economic necessity and then culture and legal framework. Part of the mode of regulation ensure that such a labor remain tied to the state and its oversee. At this point, the question of class arises. Class has both object and subjective dimension. Objectively, class is determined by access to and control over the mean of production, as well as location in the division of labor. Mostly, experts of the subjective class consciousness, the exhibit left to us come from the ruling class, who try to construct and empower priests and their temple. These are related to the economic and then religion at the heart of extra economic life. The ruling class embody the beautiful, high-born, brave, wealthy, intelligent, fortunate, blessed, good, honest, and pillar of society. These appear as the myth of idealized existence in the ancient Israel, that is sacred in relationship to extractive form may be identified. Priestcraft and politic myth. These are also a point on the others record do exist in the biblical record. Chapter 5. The many face or plunder or tribute exchange. The institution form of tribute exchange was already in exist from the time of Assyrian Bronze Age. That is Bronze Age. This took place on either side of the country's long economic crisis of the late second millennium. The basis purpose of exchange is ancient Southwest Asia was a game of pre-Cretaceous. To begin with, the tribute exchange constitute one institution from among the other, part of the constellation of form that underwent constant reconfiguration in face of the continuous effort to deal with the counter-economic crisis, the reliance of the subsistence survival. When the first millennium opened up, tribute exchange take its place as a dominant form. Within the domain of the system, Semitic splendor, where violence is woven into the fabric of the institution, a further distinction operation between outside and inside, and it is crucial for the institutional form of tribute exchange that the pattern of subsistent survival continues to function. The first reason is found with the continuity of a power and administration. It is clear that the ancient state, simplifying, did not have a commutation appeared or even the terminology for the efficient taxation. Taxation have not prevented proposal that the whole economic system rely on the tribute as the meaning of extracting self. Indeed, the move of course obscures the reality of the other institutional form that make up one a sacred economic. Debit and credit. It is important to distinguish debit from credit. Too often, credit and debit are seen to be various on the same economic future. In other words, credit is the future of allocation of the allocative institutional form, and credit is to ensure the mutual collection and real collection of other goods within the community. Credit functions as a system of mutual assistance based on a trust, may be illustrated by the state appropriate of is in certain circumstances. Feature of debate was popular in the debate later and well run from debater to lender, which initially was the state and temple, but soon include landlord to function to ensure economic hierarchy, which author have distinguished for this debit and credit now as an economic in the extra economic composition, and also form part of the mode of regulation of the sacred economy. Exchange, the department of elite plunder. This is the domain of exchange or trade. It is time misleading call, however, it is in this time acceptable to dismiss the biblical material as a misleading and irrelevant claim that the archaeology gives us the real data. It means that many of those interested in the economic matter assume exchange as a core economic activity. Investigate exchange and it the key to economic for trade, market, and surveillance give the primacy of the agriculture production. The farmer in question specialized in a certain area, speed for wool and meat, cattle for milk, and meat, grain, olive and wine, and so forth. In those days, some animal has a use as a currency. The nature of this ancient economic was an open system for trade, into the way exchange was perceived and represent mostly in the Solomon Kingdom, united by engaging in the trade. Among many other ventures, in this time, gold, silver, and metal become most popular in the using of the exchange. The important future of this story began with the idea of exchange. So later, that most important, the purpose of such exchange was quite different. Like relatively well ruling class, tool for the power, and surrounded the process with what may be called the propaganda of the acquaintance due to the particular conjunction of the social, economic, and ideological future. On the nature of market, the basic nature of exchange raises the question concerning the relationship between exchange, on the other hand, the tribute and taxation. However, there was shift in the first millennium to what seemed to be commercial operation to a greater use of market. This early market were by product of the state or logistical concern. They were not driven primarily by the profit, and they exchange every day stamped at a very local level for the cost. Risks of long distance transport remain prohibited. The market economy is especially misleading since it assumed that the type of market were experienced under the capitalism, driven by the self-interest, greedy, or the profit motive is a common definition of market for all time and place. It also assumed that a whole system of supply and demand, social work, judicial framework, political structure, economic relation, and ideological pattern in which the market is itself metaphors. For the local markets began to spring up, meat and vegetable, legume, and what not were exchange coin, chain, and the difference is that now exchange is local, operating through local market and solve logistic problem for the ruler. Chapter 6: Spirit of the Crisis. The first concern of the nature of crisis is collapse, particularly the perspective from which they have also destined and the way substances regain reoriginate that perspective. The second deal with the pervading government. This study that crisis was the norm of economic life in the ancient Southwest Asia. The first time of crisis is indeed collapse, and the ensuing period is prolonged time for crisis. The source of wealth have been removed, the place and temple destroyed, that state as system or pattern of tribute and exchange have been dismissed, and power has been lost. In this context, the agriculture record began to show a sign of crisis architecture, domination ritual, and climatic future in which disparate rulers used up their last reserve to the appear fruit god. Yet, from the perspective of the village commoners of the substances and aesthetic level of socially determined can household or collapse and actually mean as the blessed life from various means of extradition. The second crisis may be found in the interpretation of the slogan in Judah in Judgment chapter 17 and 6. In those days there was no king in Israel. All the people did what was right in their own eyes. The textual setting suggests that the overreaching editor framework in a negative, a man called Michael requests a silversmith to construct idol place from the portion of the silver he had recovered for his mother, as we assume that began on an image in the second commandment, as well as the various interests of purpose, lawlessness that followed. This destroy seemed to be negative, given voice to a ruling class concern of chores and crisis. expressed through the pen of the scriber subclass. In this light, when authors write that crisis was the norm and that economic stability was the expectation, author is still using the terminology of the ruling class, of those who left most of the record and who left that war would collapse without them. Thus, the century-long periods of crisis, whether late in the 3rd millennium BCE, in the Dark Age of 16th and earliest 15th century, and then at the turn of the 1st millennium, are actually the most stable of all. For now, the collector institution form become dominant. Now their perfect mode of the sacred come to the fore. Now sustained survivor is less threatened. Now the kingship household may concentrate on what is does best rather than having to deal with continuous external threat. It is truly a revolution, but not in the way is usually understood as a revolution from the Palatine system to the emperor or game of the planner of the follower. Conclusion: this book offers to those who want to know detailed study of the economic social issue that began and up to today context. It is pretty hard to study this book, and its complexity of institution form the basis of ancient Israeli economy. However, I'm blessed to read and to know about the theory of economic, the history of social science issue that form with the survivor, kingship, household, patron, estate, and tributes exchange, and also to begin of the currency of the ancient Israel. Overall, thank you very much, sir, to letting me read this book. I'm sure this will be helpful for my ministry. Thank you.